let's say our battery failed miserably at those prior tests. Maybe we're down below 12.2 volts out of the gate, key off. Maybe we're dropping down 9 volts or below on the crank, showing that the battery just can't take the load, just can't turn the engine over. Before we move on to charging and battery care, let's deal with the quick start issue if we need to get rolling. So this is how compact jump packs have become. This thing is slightly larger height and width than my cell phone, certainly thicker than my cell phone, weighs a bit more, and the controller for it and the alligator clips, this is modular, just plugs right into the battery pack that we were just looking at. So this stays in my luggage anytime I'm wandering anywhere far from home at all. Even my commute, camping, anything like that, the jump pack is always with me. And that's going to be your solution to immediate starts. Side benefit, these modern jump packs, they'll charge your phone, charge your laptop, run a flashlight, do all sorts of things for you at camp, at the office, wherever, when she's not needing a jump. And again, because there's 6 jumps or so in this little tiny pack, I can charge a phone that day and still jump my bike if I needed to. But these are indispensable if you want to save yourself out on the road. That's the quick start solution. Maintenance and long-term care of the battery are what's going to be more important for you. So maintaining the battery to try to avoid problems. This is a battery tender. It's a smart charger, and it can sense when the battery needs topped off and when the battery's finished being topped off. So the smart end in my hand just plugs into a 120 volt outlet anywhere in your garage or parking area. The other end has this SAE standard fitting that can plug into a number of types of ends for the bike itself. So among the options, there's the old school alligator clips, which again has the SAE end, so that would plug to the end coming off of your tender. What I personally use is the ring terminal type. I think this is what most guys use, is the ring terminal type, also with the SAE end. And what these ring terminals allow, coming over to my bike here, so I've got one of these rings on my positive, I've got one of these rings on my negative, and it routes down under the main wiring harness of the bike, under these brake lines, and there's a hole in the bottom of the battery box that this can exit out down here. And then I'm just strapped to the frame, and here's my end, right? So this has a cover that's, of course, falling down out of the way right now. Here's the cover. So normal situation, this cover would be on. We're in my garage right now is why it's off, but riding, this cover would be on. We'd keep this nice and clean. Get home, pop the cover off, and plug into the battery tender. And what that's going to do for me is the tender's going to decide, when and if I need any added charge, and top the bike off for me. Now, it's not, necessary that you plug it in every single day. The bike could sit for days, weeks. Some fellows report their bikes sitting for months and not having an issue. But with the smart chargers that know how to turn themselves off and on and maintain the battery properly, there's just no downside to keeping yourself plugged in most of the time. So I try to keep the bike on tender, especially in the winter months when it's cold. I try to keep the bike on the tender most of the time. There's just no downside to it. Can't harm the battery. We've covered basic testing with a multimeter, how to jump when we're in a hurry to get out of somewhere with a battery that's down. We've talked about battery tenders, maintainers that keep a healthy battery strong. Let's move to the next step, and let's say that we have a battery that's continuing to act up even after charging on a maintainer, or even after charging on the bike. It's still giving us cranking issues, or those multimeter readings aren't where we want them to be. We're seeing weak voltage, we're seeing weak cranking voltage. This is the next step. This little device right here, which you can pick up on Amazon very affordably, and we'll talk about that more in a second after I run this test for you. So this is going to run what we call a load test, and we see some important results here. We see the cold cranking amps are well above spec. We see the cranking voltage is good. We can see SOH's status of health of the battery is 100%. SOC status of charge is 98%. That makes sense given that we've cranked the bike several times but not let it run to charge. And we can watch the resistance reading over time as we get to know this battery and test it every month or two. We can watch the resistance change, which shows us the battery aging. So this reader is going to give us an opinion, good battery, or it's going to say charge and test again, or it's going to recommend replacement. And the reason I recommend buying a cheapo of these is because if you get to the point that it's charge and test again, charge and test again, charge and test again, and we're not getting anywhere, or if this thing eventually does say, hey, you know what, you need to replace this battery. Once we reach that stage, we're pulling the battery and heading to a retailer. The retailer is going to have much better test equipment than you or I are likely to own in our home shop. So there's no purpose to go out and buy an expensive homeowner version. Get the cheapo homeowner version because the retailer's got the good gear and you're headed there for a battery at some point anyway. And I think the only way I would change that advice is if you live quite far from a retailer and you're having your battery shipped to you somehow, then yeah, get yourself a high-end model of these that's very reliable, very repeatable results. Don't go for the cheapo in that event. The rest of us who have an AutoZone, an O'Reilly's, a Napa, a Walmart, your BMW dealer, really nearby, don't spend a lot of money on this device. Just get a good enough device that it gives you enough information to know if you need to head to the store. Here we have the final piece in my home arsenal. If we were running the load test with the piece of equipment we just looked at, and it was recommending charge and test again. The battery tender maintainer that I was showing you earlier, the rate that thing charges at is very low indeed. It's not a trickle charger, and don't confuse it with that because these new smart chargers are different and safer than a trickle. But it is a very low charging rate, similar to a trickle charger. So if I'm trying to charge a battery deeply for a test, I'm going to want a little more oomph than that. And that is where I roll out the same Schumacher that I use on my autos. And it has some selectable rates here. And basically what I do is I use that 6 to 2 amp charge maintain. Now, this will charge and maintain on a car safely. I don't use this to maintain on a motorcycle. I don't have a good answer for you on why, other than I just don't trust it, like the small little battery tender on a motorcycle. So I never use this as a maintainer. But what I will do is use that rate right there on this device to get the motorcycle battery charged up overnight to a full deep charge. Occasionally, I will use that 40 amp boost if I want to get a quick look at a battery. I do not ever touch that 200 amp setting on a motorcycle battery. That's strictly cars and trucks jump starting right there. So this is the big unit that comes out for me when I hear the charge and test again. Now, if you don't want to have something like this rolling around your garage, or you don't have other needs for it, like I have, multiple cars and trucks outside, the battery tender we looked at will charge your battery fully eventually. It might just take a lot more time than this guy does. But this guy's my final step at home. If I can't get a battery holding a charge and passing the load test and dependably cranking the bike, if I can't get that happening with this, we are definitely 100% headed to the retailer at that point. Something's the matter. So that's my full battery care, top to bottom, multimeter, my jump pack, my load tester, my maintainer, battery tender, and then my large charger, the Schumacher, that I use for the heavy jobs, and I've plugged back in here now. So this is my normal state in the garage. Is this guy just sits, and we can see that we are fixing that 98% charge that we saw a minute ago on the load tester when we ran that. So this will go blinking green once the battery's reached 80%. This will go solid green once the battery's topped off and this guy has stopped charging completely. And then depending on where I'm parked in the garage, I actually have a 25-foot extension of that SAE cord that'll let me put the bike anywhere in here that I want to put the bike and reach it with the charger. So why all this focus for the 310? A couple things. The battery is, in my opinion, under-spec'd right out of the factory. These batteries, when they're 100% topped off, will barely start this bike. If you have the slightest starter issue, as armatures go, the required amps climb to crank the motor. If you have the slightest issue there in the starter, this battery is probably going to be too weak to get her going. And then, of course, if you are pre-21, these bikes are famous for some charging system issues. If you haven't been through that already and had yours replaced already, then you are susceptible to the dreaded stator issue. And aside from the stator issue, which can cause you issues, there have been issues with the voltage regulators on these bikes as well. So, every bike has its Achilles heels here and there, and the 310, the overall battery and charging system is just, a little bit of a spongy spot for the bike. I'm not going to call it weak because I think BMW's mostly straightened it out, but it's still a little bit spongy. These batteries are still under-spec'd in my mind. You can fix that by going out and buying a third-party battery with higher cranking amps right out of the gate. I just haven't done that because mine's under warranty, and I got a free battery replacement when I needed one. But you could fix it with a third party. I will once this thing's out of warranty and I'm not getting free batteries anymore. So yeah, it's just if you're gonna own and ride a 310, you're gonna want to have a good relationship with battery testing, battery care. You're gonna want to understand your charging system. You're gonna want to know, from the battery to the ground to the stator to the voltage regulator, just the whole circuit and how everything comes together and works. You want to get good at troubleshooting that yourself. You want to know when it's time to go to the battery dealer. You want to know when it's time to call the parts house and start working on the charging system of the bike as well. So anyway, these are some of the things that I do, and you are welcome to hit me with any questions, and I'll be glad to tell you anything that I do know about the bike, the battery, and the charging system.
as well as recommendations on equipment to test with.